Tell your neighbor, we are doing something different today. So tell them, be ready for something different. Now, the beauty with something different is we are all expectant and we are all open-minded. And did you know that God loves creativity? Do you know that? He gave us that ability to create, isn't it? So it's different, but it will be very powerful. And I want to call my sister Violet to come. And those who don't know Violet, she's in charge of our parenting ministry. And she works with a team. And please come over. And she's very passionate about parenting. In fact, we had a movie yesterday, last night actually. And it's amazing. People came over to watch a movie at church. A movie with a great lesson. Children came, adults came. And I'm so happy to welcome her as she's going to introduce our speaker for today. Our facilitator, actually, for today. He'll be a teacher, preacher, facilitator. And we'll learn together as the Lord speaks to us. So I want you to put your hands together for Violet Njero as she comes.
Good morning. Praise the Lord. I'm so happy to see us today here because it's a different thing that we are doing. But I just want us to look at something. Just before I invite Johnie, I just want us to look at what is happening to the world today. There was a ruling that was made at the High Court. And the people that lost in that ruling said, we have not given up. Did you see that? They said, yeah, we could have lost now, but we are still going to pursue it. That's the LBGT agenda that was being pushed by that ruling. And by the way, that ruling was even captured on CNN that Kenya had turned down. It was being called a colonial law that was allowed to go on. Every time we see something happening on the news, and we have lots of feeds nowadays because news are on our phones throughout the day, 24 hours. People have got to a point where they're saying, who is going to help us? We are kind of like at a place like we've given up. We hear a killing that has happened and people just raise their hands and they say, now what? Now, when we see all those things, it's like believers and unbelievers, we are reacting the same way, isn't it? Now, I need us to read just 2 verses because one of the things that we find is that there are 2 things that we need to be aware of. I need us to go to Hosea chapter 4, verse 6. We'll just read a bit of it. And 2 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 11. If the media team, you can give me 2 Corinthians as I read Hosea. Hosea chapter 4, verse 6 says, my people are destroyed from lack of knowledge. Because you have rejected knowledge, I also reject you as my priests. Because you have ignored the law of your God, I will also ignore your children. Then 2 Corinthians chapter 2 verse 11 says, in order that Satan might not outwit us, for we are not ignorant of his devices. It says, we are not unaware of his schemes. Now, when it comes to relationships, the way our children view themselves, the way they view sexuality, I think we need to not be taken advantage of by the enemy. And the only way we can do that is we do not become ignorant of his schemes. And that's what we are doing as a parenting ministry. We want to be able to equip you. We want to be able to show you what is happening in the world around us. So that when we are faced with issues concerning our children, we're not just going to be helpless. Because the word of God gives us knowledge. And wisdom is knowledge plus understanding. So we cannot be ignorant of what the enemy is doing. The enemy has plans for our children. And they are big. And we cannot just sit and just wait like ducks waiting to be taken off. So this morning, I want to welcome Johnie Gathuku. One of the things that Johnie does is he deals with teenagers. That's where God has called him. And unlike us, who are teenagers in the house, might not speak to us, they might not tell us their innermost things, they are able to talk to other people. And we want to hear from him. I would like all of us to just be open. He might share things that might surprise us. Let us be surprised so that we realize what the enemy has for our children. And we will be changed. And in Membley Baptist Church, we are going to be different. We are going to raise a generation that is going to be different. It doesn't matter where we are. We could be in a perverted world, but we are going to raise our children in purity. So thank you and welcome, Johnie. Let us pray. Father, in Jesus' name, we want to thank you this morning. We thank you because you are our God and you are a good Father to us. And you've given us the responsibility of being parents. And even those that are not yet parents, there's a hope that they're going to be. So this morning, as we sit under your at your feet, oh Lord, we ask that you teach us. Lord, I pray for Johnie, that you're going to give him the word to speak to us, that the word will come with clarity, that we are going to be educated, we are going to be informed, and we will be transformed by the message that he has for us today. I give you thanks. I ask that every word that is spoken from here will bring you honor and glory. In Jesus' name I pray.
Thank you so much, Violet. I'm so grateful. Good morning. Thanks again, Pastor Ben. I think this is a unique way of handling a Sunday service. And I want to pray that God will make this a memorable moment, even in our path towards parenting. I'm also humbled. It's a long time I think I had so much precipitation when I was thinking about, is it perspiration? When I was thinking about this session this morning, when I think about the kind of burden that would have on me, leading many of you who are older than I am, and we're thinking about parenting in terms of our children. But I've had the privilege of listening to your sons and daughters, so I hope I will reflect on that. I'm using part of that to reflect to you, and I trust that the Lord will help us to think about this together. I have come with my wife and family. I think the children have gone to Sunday school. My wife is seated back there. And we've come with Jake and his wife. They are friends visiting in the country. They're on a short-term assignment. And they are friends, they are cousins to one of our close friends. And so they decided to come and do church with us today. So thank you so much, Jake. Great. Hallelujah. The first thing I want to talk about is pick up from where Violet has left. Purity is a serious battle for anyone growing up in our generation at this point. I'm not so sure whether I've said this before in this church, that this country, Kenya has the highest mobile phone internet traffic in the whole world. Did you know that? That we have the highest percentage of our population accessing internet via the mobile phone. And we are, I think, at about, the last time I checked, the data was showing for 2018, we were at 84%. 84%. What that means is that anyone growing up in this country will be greatly influenced by the content that flows through the smartphone. And a larger percentage of that will be lots of entertainment that will pass through that. Now, that scales up the battle for purity for the younger people who are growing up in this nation. My first plea for this presentation as a parent is to try to imagine the kind of sexual messages, the billboards, the music, the movies. We are almost having a movie shop in every estate. Now imagine growing up in such an environment. It is just too much. And I want to plead to you as parents, we need to be more empathetic to our children and try to imagine what they are up against and make a step closer towards them than probably we are doing at the present. If there's any time children needed a present parent, is now. In fact, from among the books that I've read, and I know this has probably been said on this platform, that a present bad parent, a present parent who is not so good and knowledgeable about their parenting are better than one who is knowledgeable but is absent. Even if you don't know what to do, but at least you are present, you are way off better than he who knows what to do, but they are never there. K. Crew did a research showing how teenagers desire to talk to their parents. And actually, as we speak, the father scores a meager 7% availability in terms of the relationship they have with the children. Every time I go to a high school, and after I've preached and a student comes to talk to me, I am almost 70% sure the sentence will begin, Johnie, I want to tell you about my father. I'm almost 70% sure. And I've been doing this for the last 19 years, and I go to schools if I'm not in church. If you don't see me in church, I'm in a school. And since you don't see me often, I'm more in schools than I am in the church. And my heart bleeds. And I remember one of those days, I think, when we had that kind of repeated engagement with students. And during that period of time, my wife was working at the Standard Chartered Bank as a system administrator in their data center. And we had a very hard conversation because I was very busy moving on into the schools, and therefore sometimes she would have night shifts. I would be coming in the evening and I take her to the work. And we realized actually, whatever we are hearing in the schools will be repeated in our own house if we don't change. We had to make very radical decisions as a family to change the patterns, and it is not in any way for any other goal, but to increase the contact time we have with the children that God has blessed us with. And therefore, even before we begin, I pray that the children they are confronted, they are desperately in need of your presence. And if there's nothing else, probably you pick up from our time in this workshop, is that please go back home and change your schedules. Do something and be present. Because what we are about to share today, there is no way an absent parent can even come halfway to mitigate the kind of influence that is around us. If you're not available, we don't even need to have this discussion. Because even when you're available, it will still be bad. If you are absent, it will be way worse. I cannot even imagine what kind of context your child will grow up in. And therefore, 5 things I think I want to say at this point. Number 1 is being an intentional parent. What has actually affected the changes around us and the influences that we are going to talk about have adversely affected the unintentional parent. The unintentional parent is a parent who has no schedule, no intentionality. They have planned nothing. And they have absolutely no way of, that they have agreed as parents, how are we going to raise our children? They have zero framework that they are operating on. I remember in 2017, when we invited Philip Telfer, the president of Media Talk 101, and he stayed in our house. I don't know whether I share that story here. And when we were living with him in our house, I shared that story. And let me just repeat it for just in case you didn't come to church that day. And he asked me, Johnie, how old is your son? Then my son was 9. And he asked me, how far are you in your curriculum to disciple your son before you release him to the public at the age of 18? I asked him, Philip, what do you mean curriculum? Curriculums are for schools. He told me, no. The curriculum in school is a government's agenda for your son. Okay? That's the government's agenda for your son. Then I woke up because I thought, the government has an agenda with my son. And they have put together a curriculum to produce the kind of worker or citizen they want. Then he asked me, what about you? Because God entrusted you as a parent. What do you have? What is your plan for your son? Because the government has a plan. And then he shared with me how you ought to actually spread out what you want your son or daughter to know by the time they leave your home at the age of 18. And then he told me, if you do not have any plan, the kind of environment we are living in means that immediately no plan exists, the media will suck all the time that is unplanned in the house. Just in case that if this afternoon you don't have a plan with our children, definitely when we go in the afternoon, a TV will be switched on. You know why a TV is switched on? Because there was no plan. And that will move on like that, and I think I'll talk about that. Secondly, is to provide a home that meets their needs for love and significance. A son or a daughter who grows up in a home where they are affirmed, they are loved, they are spoken with, they feel they belong, are at a very high level of being able to stand against any other influence outside the home. The children who are vulnerable are children who don't feel secure within your four walls. And I remember like now when I do workshops, a mother will come and say, the father is so harsh, so that the children are not able actually to have a relationship with the father. They have never had conversations with him. And this is critical because especially when you're talking about sexual purity and the battle for purity, it would mean that the whole complex issue of our sexuality is also tied with love, how we feel we belong. If I feel insecure at home, I'll be vulnerable when I walk out. And therefore, strengthening the bond at home is actually what wins the child very early, and it is an expression of your support for them. The fact that you're able to hold them before they leave the house, the fact that you're able to hold them and pray with them every morning, for us who release our children every morning, the fact that you're able to affirm them when they do something right. Last month I was with a girl. The mother is a serious, successful hotelier. And as we sat together and I was facilitating a workshop which she was part of and the mother was there, she told me, my mother has never said anything positive about the things that I do. But if I dare make a mistake in the house, that one is quickly picked. And I will get a 3-minute lecture for each of the mistake that was in the problem. The other thing I want to raise in terms of your support for the child is very serious intercession. Very serious intercession as support. I'm not so sure whether in your experience as a parent, you have told your son not to do something and then they do it again. And then you tell them not to do something and then they do it again. And you get so angry, you feel like you want to eat them alive. Because you're wondering, how many times should I tell you not to do this? Now we need to know that they are sinners like we are. And they are struggling with sin exactly like we are. And they are in need of intercession so that they may overcome the temptations of the enemy, because it is a battle for their soul. They are struggling to actually walk right in the same way that you're struggling to walk right. And I do remember, when I reflect on this, I thought about when I had told my sons, we had talked about a habit he had of just picking up the phone and, spending time with it. And at some point I got shocked. And I discovered that I was telling him something more than twice. And then he would cry. It's when one of those days I was so angry, I was almost beating him the one out of anger. And then I paused and I realized that my son, as much as he fears me, and I beat him last time, he has sinned again, not because he doesn't respect me, but because he is a human being as a sinner struggling with sin. And that drove me into the bedroom to cry for his soul and ask God to have mercy on him and to actually help him overcome. And I'm not so sure whether you have ever gotten there with your daughter, where you realize now this is beyond me. I have said all I thought I needed to say. I have threatened as much I have needed to threaten. I have beaten sometimes strongly as I ought to. I have given the rewards that I thought will actually give me the kind of fruit I need. But then you still realize you're not getting it. And I want to invite you as parents to serious intercession for our children. To battle for their souls in prayer. So that we do not just depend upon what we tell them, but we are seriously committing to raise them up through prayer. Another one, in terms of you supporting your child, is studying a little bit more so that you can communicate effectively. I know as parents, sometimes we have depended upon our age to assert authority over children. And we make statements like, I was a teenager like you, isn't it? So there's nothing new you're telling me. The truth is, there are a few dynamics about growing up now that were not like when I was growing up. And I need to be a bit more knowledgeable so that I can be more compassionate, a high priest who is able to identify, and one who speaks in love. Because I'm empathetic. And I cannot be empathetic until you study more. When I was preparing for this session, I think go through I've done like 30 hours of listening to different resources, visiting websites, reading books. I'm even feeling overloaded. I felt like I don't know what to say this morning. My heart became so compassionate towards my children, and I started becoming a bit more familiar and more merciful when I'm dealing with them, knowing the kind of issues they're dealing with. And when you are knowledgeable, you're able to communicate a bit more effectively. You won't use blank statements. Isn't it? Because when you don't know about something, you use a blank statement. Nimesema yachwe. Hata sitaki kujua nini. Nimesema yachwe. When you don't know something, you want now to assert your blanket authority to cover for your ignorance. Isn't it? So unauliza kwa nini nimesema isifanywe? Isn't it? And it will carry the day. But it has not helped you to communicate effectively. You could have said the same thing in love and a bit more compassionately. The other one, the last one, number 5, is for you to be available. And I think I've mentioned that at the beginning. We will need to actually be available. I know we are busy people, and I know we are successful people in what we do. And I know the world is needing us badly, isn't it? But I think your family needs you more. There's someone who tells me, if this country will need another preacher to the high schools, they can get. But my children will never get another father, or they'll never get another mother. So that's one role that I cannot actually delegate. It's the only role in this life that I have to play it myself as a man. And one of there's this quote, next slide, there's this quote made by a son. Maybe I can allow you to read it. This caused me to feel a bit worried. And I remember the prayer of our Lord Jesus Christ, when he taught us how to pray to the Father, he said, Father, what does it say? Huh? Lead us not to temptation. And he says, deliver us from evil. That's a cry of a child to a father. The child is crying to the Father because the Father is in authority, because later on we say, for thine is the glory, thine authority and power, because it says, you cry out to the Father as a child that lead me not into temptation. Last week when I was speaking in a parents' workshop in a school, and I hope you invite me to your son's parents' meetings, we were talking about the way we have arranged our house, the way our house is arranged. You can arrange your house in a way that it actually leads your children to temptation. Because if the TV is the center of how the seats are arranged, what you're doing is, if I sit on that seat, the next reflex I will have is to pick a remote and switch it on. Why? Because that's the way the house is arranged. It is arranged to make me want to watch TV. So when you come in the evening and start making noise, kwa nini watu wameshinda huku wakiwatch TV siku mzima? But that's the way you arranged the seats. You arranged the seats and you led us into the temptation. So when we sat, the only thing we could do is switch it on. I want to cover 4 major battlefronts that our sons and daughters' sexuality is against. And I hope I'll move a bit faster. There are 4 major battlegrounds that I have filtered down. There are many other things that we could have said this morning, but I want to cover just 4. One is that we're looking at a serious attack by intellectuals of international repute that are Kenyans, and a number of them are liberal. I do not know why this happens. But the people who are thought leaders in our society and who are celebrated internationally, as a majority of them are actually liberal. Secondly, you're going to look at the message of the comprehensive sex education advocates, which in this country are presented or appear as international reproductive health NGOs, and the umbrella that covers that is the SRHR Alliance. Then you're going to look at the entertainment media as a major point of influence. And then we're going to look at the unguarded homes or extended family interactions. I think I will explain what that means. Okay, now the next slide is a funny one. I hope you know who that is. I think I saw that image last week. That's Binyavanga, the late Binyavanga. In 2002, his short story Discovering Home fetched him the Kane Prize for African Writing. That's the highest writing award on the continent. In 2007, he was actually he was nominated by the World Economic Forum as a young global leader. An award given to people for their potential to contribute the shaping of the culture in terms of the future of the world. Now, this is a Kenyan, WEC is a very serious platform for influencing culture. They're the ones who had organized this forum where we had this teacher from Molo who we were singing about. You remember? He declined the award, meaning Binyavanga is already such an influence that he can afford to ignore. I don't really know how big this guy is. This guy is big. He was big. Now he's dead. This guy was big. This is not a woman. By the way, those who do not know, this was not a woman. This is a man. I want us to play a small clip that he gave as a TED talk. And this is what your children and our sons are looking.
And it seemed as if you could hear these swirling noises of people. And it wasn't so much that there were any threats. There were no direct threats, Baba, because I felt that enough people who disagreed with what I am agreed that you could not doubt my sense of honor and the work that I had done for many years to change this continent. And therefore, even the people of the church up to the cardinal were unable to confront me directly. Because I believe, Baba, that this continent is ready to agree to disagree and at the same time to tolerate. I must tell you a story, Baba, you know. So I just come out, right? So there I'm just being this public homosexual. And the news is going crazy. Everywhere, there's this noise, right? So I get this phone call from the Nation Media Group, who are the most important media group, and they're like, oh, is it Binyavanga? Yes. You know, there's this program we do about role models. And the boarding school you went, Mangu High School, the oldest secondary school in the country, and one of the most prestigious ones, they say they want you to come on Saturday to film this show we do to be role model for school children. So I'm like, Papa, you can't believe. I tell the guy, are you crazy? Don't you know I've just come out as a public homosexual? This is Kenya. Are you mad? He's like, no. I've just spoken to the literature teacher. The school says they want you there. On Sunday, they're shooting it live, and they say that you're the most important alumni after President Kibaki. So you have to come. So, okay, I say, okay, I'm going. So we go to Mano. We reach there. The head boy takes me around the school. We see the dorms. They're telling me everything. Mr. Kiwanuka, who used to teach chemistry, which I flunked. He's still there. I left that school in 1987. The man is still, he hasn't even changed. And the guy tells me, oh, Pinyavanga, you know we've been seeing you on BBC. We're very proud. Sometimes I say, what do you mean, what have you been seeing on BBC? He doesn't say anything. So, we sit in the hall. They're ready to shoot everything. The whole school is there. No one looks weird or anything. And then we see a man in the uniform of a priest running. It looks like he's running from 500 meters away from the administration block. He's running, followed by another man in a suit. They come there to the front where I'm sitting, and the man, he's the school chaplain. He says, I'm very sorry. I'm very sorry. The cardinal called. We can't do this. You know, we are very close to the church. We can't do this. We can't do it. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm very sorry, in front of the school. And I said to myself, Africa has changed. Or maybe it never needed to. That those people who came from that time of colonization to split us apart, until our splitting apart comes from within our own.
That's and probably many of you as adults have not watched that. But Binyavanga is celebrated by the younger generation growing up. And it's likely that maybe your son or daughter will stumble on that. But what shocks me is this. He says a number of things. I don't know whether you are listening very keenly. Number one, he says that the cardinal has never confronted him about his lifestyle. Here he's making reference to Candido Njue. And he gets invited to Mangu High School. Can you imagine? As a role model, being pushed by the Nation Media, and the school agrees to that arrangement. The literature department from Mangu High School calls him to address boys, and they receive him as the only second most highly honored of their alumni, only next to President Kibaki. I hope Mangu alumni who are here will go to protest. I mean, if you have your son in Mangu or you are an alumni of Mangu. That's a serious issue. That's an extremely serious issue. Now imagine that the cardinal never got to know about it. Imagine that was aired, because it would have been aired to the boys as a hero, and it would also have been aired on Nation Media. It would have been catastrophic for this country. And you know what he was saying? That maybe we never needed to change. Now, the issue with the international intellectuals, the intellectuals of international repute we have in this country, is the fact that if we are intellectually honest, we will know that they have actually seriously made a contribution in their field. In other words, he's a good writer. We cannot dismiss his writing skills and giftings. But when that now shifts in terms of morals, we have an issue. and a huge issue. The next big name from this, celebrated from this soil, is Barack Obama. Now, I do not know which side of Barack Obama, there's politics. And politics in this country, we really don't think properly. But listen to what he said. We have done more in the 2.5 years I have been here than the previous 43 presidents. To uphold that principle, whether it's ending, don't ask, don't tell, making sure that gay and lesbian partners can visit each other in hospitals, making sure that federal benefits can be provided to the same-sex couples. This had a ripple effect all over the world, because it therefore meant that federal money was used to fund programs all over Africa. Mary Stopes and all other SRHR, Alliance Reproductive Health, they got funding during the era of Obama. And you know that in terms of his oratory skills, probably in terms of his governance, I'm not an American, maybe I don't know what Americans think, in terms of his other capacities and giftings. In my own thinking, Obama was amazing when you listen to him. When he spoke, you wanted to just be glued on the screen and listen and you say, man, that's a president speaking. But you know what's happening? A child is not able to tell the difference. Your child is not able to tell the difference. They are not able to have critical thinking to separate Obama, the oratory speaker, with Obama, the supporter of homosexual principles and lifestyles. You and I can separate that because we are growing, but our children are not. And now, these are discussions that you and I normally do not have with our children because we do not think this is an issue to discuss with your child. So when everything is going on TV, this is the only day that's when White House was put into the rainbow colors, the symbols of LGBTQ. And they lit it up when the Supreme Court made the ruling, allowing that not to be decriminalized. My heart broke when I thought about it. And I thought about how many children in this country who look up to him will be confused and probably never get across to knowing the difference of what that meant. Closely to this, and I think we have many more that probably I would have mentioned about. Let me now talk about comprehensive sex education, which in this country finds its expression in that alliance. That alliance is a conglomerate of several organizations that are well-funded and have lots of donor money, NGOs, and probably I do not know whether anybody here works for any of those member groups, NGOs, to that alliance. Early in the year, I think it was late last year, now I'm forgetting, when this campaign was actually happening. I think it was late last year, isn't it? When the year was coming to a close, when there was an alarm that there's KCP students who are pregnant. Do you remember that? And the whole issue of teenage pregnancy became a national discussion for several months. I don't think the issue it's not even yet over. It's still part of our discussion. When you think high school today, you're actually thinking about teenage pregnancy. Now, I would like us to play a short clip. So as media is getting to play a small clip, because I would like you to be familiar with this and be able to get more resources from it, is that during the same period of time, before this happened, there was a condom plant that has been made on Mombasa Road that came out silently. You know that. We have now a local condom manufacturing plant. And serious money was invested towards that. In my own interpretation, is that yes, we have an issue, but I feel a bit of those statistics have actually been exaggerated towards creating an apprehension and an urgency and a kind of fear amongst the parents, so that you will now be ready to be told, now it's time for us to teach our children comprehensive sex education. And when that now is said, we probably will have no other alternative, because as we speak right now, I doubt whether we as a church have an alternative curriculum if the government said, okay, fine, you don't want that, so what should we teach? My fear is that actually as a church, we probably do not have an alternative. Listen to this.
The It's All One curriculum, also promoted by International Planned Parenthood, reveals the multiple manipulative tactics used to indoctrinate and sexualize children through CSE. Like other CSE programs, It's All One claims, among other things, to be evidence-based, comprehensive, human rights, gender-sensitive, and culturally appropriate education that will increase young people's responsible decision-making, to reduce adolescent rates of pregnancy and sexually transmitted infections, including HIV. It's All One, however, like most CSE programs, is really just cleverly disguised abortion rights, sexual pleasure education, masquerading as human rights, gender, and sexual and reproductive health education. It indoctrinates youth in radical feminist ideologies regarding power, privilege, and equality. It aggressively promotes abortion with 112 references to abortion, manipulating young minds using scare tactics, telling girls, every minute of every hour a pregnant girl is dying, so we need to legalize abortion. Students are then required to read stories of girls who have had abortions so they can learn to walk in her shoes in the decision to have an abortion. Like other CSE programs, It's All One has an obsessive focus on sexual pleasure, mentioning sexual pleasure 62 times. It promotes multiple sex acts, the idea that one sexual practice is not better or worse than another, and instructs children on how to stimulate themselves or their partner to orgasm. Children are also asked to read personal stories about feeling sexually attracted to someone of the same sex. It also helps students identify the skills they need to be able to negotiate comfortable sexual relationships, and claims there is no right age to have sex, and that each person has to determine when he or she feels ready to have sex. To explore their readiness, children fill out a worksheet that infers children are ready to have sex when they are feeling close to the other person, when both of you want to have sex, when you are feeling sexually attracted to the other person, and when you're feeling comfortable about telling the other person what feels good sexually. It teaches that human rights encompass sexual rights, including alleged rights to all persons to sexual expression and the right to seek sexual pleasure. Students are also given a list of problems they can work on or advocate for, such as adolescents don't have access to sexual and reproductive health services, and where abortion is illegal, it is dangerous. It's All One curriculum has been in high demand since it was launched several years ago at the United Nations, with requests coming from more than 150 countries and from every state in the United States. This program has been taught to children across the world.
I'll give you, I think I will forward on the church WhatsApp all the resources I'm going to have so that you can be able to look at this further and engage with it. When we had this comprehensive sex education, I do not think as a country we were actually ready. And we were, in a sense, at a point where we were ready for anything because we didn't have an alternative document to present to government. It's just like the Constitution. The way the Constitution was laden with certain things that we didn't like, but since we didn't have an alternative document, we accepted largely on it. Now that's something every one of us must engage, because IPPF, International Planned Parenthood Federation, which is a whole conglomerate, is the most powerful organization in the world. It is actually not even an organization. It is like a consortium of very many organizations, hundreds of them, that come together to push an agenda to the rest of the world. And dear friends and parents, not only are our children at attack from people who are sharp, who are writing columns on the newspapers and who are coming on TV as experts, but also now this is now a new front in the school. It is actually now being pushed through the academic side. And you and I need to be aware what has been taught. O.S. Guinness no, it's called, I think, Os Guinness. He said, modern atheism is parasitic to the best of Christian truths and a protest to the worst of Christian behavior. When you listen to the arguments both by those who are very sharp and those who are pushing, and the whole of this other SRHR alliance, the truth is, they actually contort, they change what is part of our most precious of Christian truth. Os Guinness is saying, if there was no Christianity, there would be no atheism. Basically, that's what he is saying. That they actually cling on our key truths and they twist what we value most. And then they react very badly to our worst of behavior. Meaning, we seem like we are hypocrites. Because when there is this issue, we support it. When it comes to this other issue, we are silent. And therefore, our duality, the fact that we are not consistent as believers, the fact that right in this country, we can really shout when it comes to the issues of abortion. So the atheists look at us and they say, these guys are hypocrites, isn't it? Because how come that in a country like ours, there can be people who are actually going hungry and there are so many Christians in the same country? So atheism rises from our own bad representation of the Christian faith. The other day we were looking at international statistics. Christians have the highest divorce rate amongst all other religions. Did you know that? Christians have a 37%. Hinduism has 1% divorce rate amongst them. So we talk about certain convictions, but we contradict them by our practice. And that duality creates conflict in the hearts of those who are looking at us. Majority of our children, our own children, who will probably fall away from the faith and who will probably be lured away by every sexual temptation, is most likely the duality of our character at home. The fact that my son listens to me preaching, but he cannot reconcile who I am at home with the things that I do in church. They get confused. And that confusion creates conflict in their minds, and they cannot trust anything else that you say. If I divorce their mother, if I beat their mother, if I tell the lies, if I myself am not a model to the children, and I am a very serious member of Membley Baptist Church, you are better off an unbeliever because you're confusing the child. You're creating conflict in the heart of that child concerning what is true and what is not. And when we are found in sin, the issue is that we should not be silent. You should tell my son, son, this one I did wrong, so that you preserve the truth, and then they know that you are not perfect, isn't it? So that you retain the truth in their heads. You tell them, in this issue, I made a mistake. I sinned. I fell in this issue. The truth is this, and it remains the truth. Even if I'm your father and your mother, I failed here. So that you don't create inconsistency in the mind of the young person. When you do, you make them vulnerable. They are not able to hold on to anything, because they cannot really understand our faith. But also, what Os Guinness is actually passing on to us is, if you go to the next slide, is that one of our greatest truths that we have in the Christian faith is the truth about freedom. We talk about come and be set free by Jesus Christ, isn't it? Our message is about forgiveness, which is freedom from sin. Now, how you define freedom is very important to the child, because the same word is a key word when it comes to discussions about purity. Freedom is a key word when you're talking about purity. Now, the UN Children's Rights Convention, Article 13, said this: the child shall have the right to freedom of expression, This right shall include freedom to seek, receive, impart information, ideas of all kinds, regardless of the frontiers, either orally, in writing, or in print, in the form of art, and through any other media of the child's choice. When the country started beating us, when the rain started beating us in this country, it is the day that we actually approved in our laws the basic child's right in this country. The high schools have become ungovernable. Teachers do not know how to actually work around children. And it is us parents, when my child is disciplined, I'll be the first one to step in that school to actually make noise to the teachers. Now, what does this mean to us? And allow me, bear with me in terms of how I'm driving this. Now, remember that freedom, we talk about freedom as believers, that come to Christ and you will find freedom from sin, isn't it? We get freedom from sin, and therefore we proclaim freedom. But the kind of freedom we preach is not the kind of freedom that is spoken of by the likes of Binyavanga and all other liberal intellectuals and the comprehensive sex education advocates. That's not the same kind of freedom they are talking about. They are saying, let's give freedom to the child to decide where they want to get information from and to do what they want. Now, that kind of freedom, the next slide, if you look at the next slide, which now I've tried to actually talk about the redefining of what freedom is. In the mind of the young person, of the child that is growing, fornication is a freedom to do what? It is redefined to mean freedom to enjoy sexual pleasure without any inhibitions. When you talk about pornography, it's the freedom to watch what I want. They've redefined homosexuality as the freedom to actually love. Sorry, I think I forgot to fill in up. Freedom to love who I want. Abortion is the freedom to kill whoever I want. Transgender and the whole debate about our gender identity is the imagination that you can have the freedom to change your gender. I'm even shocked we are having this conversation. I never thought that in the world we will get to. I used to read the children of Israel in Egypt and their movement to Canaan, and I say, these guys, what was wrong with them? Now they are looking at us and maybe they are wondering, what's wrong with these guys of 21st century? How can they not even know whether you are a man or a... What's wrong with them? You know the way you used to read children of Israel and then you say, me, I would never have done that. I would never have shouted because God delivered me. Now they are laughing at us because we do not even know whether you are a male or female. That in Canada, children are born without a gender so that when they grow, they will decide. What kind of absurdity? But dear friends, we who live in this country as Kenya, we know that we have the highest percentage of expatriates on this continent. Do you know that? We have the highest percentage of expatriates. We have the highest percentage of international NGOs headquartered in our city. Therefore, our city is exposed to all the problems happening in the first world. And as a parent, we need to be conscious of that. The freedom to redefine marriage. The freedom to divorce. That I have a choice to separate when I think about it at whatever point I think about it. Now, when you look at all this, these are freedoms redefined in the context of sexuality. Now, let me give you one response that Christ had so that we can go to the third and the fourth. And that gives us maybe time to start coming to a close. In Matthew chapter 19, Matthew chapter 19 opens up when Jesus is having a conversation with his disciples and the Pharisees chime in and ask a question. Now it came to pass when Jesus had finished these sayings that he departed from Galilee and came to the region of Judea beyond Jordan. Carry on, verse number 2. And great multitudes followed him and he healed them there. Now verse 3 is when they asked, and the Pharisees also came to him, testing him, asking him, is it lawful for a man to divorce his wife for just any reason? They were asking, do we have freedom to divorce? That's what they were actually asking. And he answered and said to them, have you not read Now, my English teacher taught me this is a rhetoric question. If someone asks you, have you not read? What they're telling you is that this thing is obvious, something is wrong with you. Isn't it? Or rather, the information you're asking is easily accessible if only you took care to look for it. Haven't you read that he who made them at the beginning made them male and female? And said, for this reason. What reason? Huh? No, let's talk. I want to hear an answer. We're in a workshop now. Today is not a sermon, remember. And I know you are forgetting. Today is a workshop, it's not a sermon. What reason? That he made them male and female. We don't marry each other because we love each other. No! He said we marry each other because I am a man and she is a woman. That's a fundamental truth that undergirds why we get married. We get married because I am male and my wife is female. That's why we get married. Any other union cannot be called marriage. It is something else. It is not marriage. Marriage is only one thing, a man and a woman. And it is based on the fact that he who created them, Jesus does not even say God. He says he who created them. In other words, from the beginning, the designer who designed them male and female. And because he designed them male and female, he said, for that reason, because I designed them male and female, based on my design, based on that design of male and female, the man thereafter shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh in the same way that I had created originally male and female. Now, you have not gotten that one. Let me repeat. Becoming one flesh is a creation of God in the same weight that you are male. Can I repeat again? He who created them male and female, isn't it? How did he create them male and female? He did not use his hands, he used his words. He spoke and they became. Okay? He spoke and they became. Now he says, he spoke again and he said, a man shall leave his father and mother and be joined to his wife. And the two, he spoke them and he spoke them to become one flesh. So they are one flesh in the same way that they are created by him according to his design, male and female. Therefore, now that makes sense when you come now to the next verse. The next verse then now says in verse number 6, so then they are no longer two but one. Who is saying that? Not God. He who created them. Now, don't use the word God because it's not there. It is he who created them. The one who designed them is the one who is now saying they are no longer two but they are one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together. Hey, go back to 6. Let not man. Why? Why shouldn't you separate? Because you're not the creator. Unless you're a creator, that's when now you can separate. But you can't separate if you are not. If you don't have creative power of creating a male and creating a female, divorce is not in your league. Wewe unacheza ligi ndogo. Discussions of divorce ziko kwa creators. Creators are the ones who can now discuss. Wewe unacheza ligi. What is he saying? Then they asked, look at verse number 7. Verse number 7 comes and asks, now go to 7. They said to him, why then did Moses command to give a certificate of divorce? Now notice, they have not challenged what Jesus has said. They have said, okay, fine. Umesema hatukuli mikate. Kwa nini Pastor Ben anakula? That's a different question than saying, you said hatukuli mikate, kila mtu asiku. Why? Kwa nini Pastor Ben anakula
Na umesema kila mtu aku. Then he goes on in verse 8 and said, Moses, because of the hardness of your hearts, permitted you, he did not command you. Because they said, why did Moses command us? Well, Moses didn't command you. Moses permitted you. Why? Because of the hardness of your hearts. But it was not so from the beginning. That's not how the designer had designed it. Now, I say to you, whoever divorces his wife except for his sexual immorality and marries another commits adultery. And whoever marries her who is divorced commits adultery. 10. His disciples say to him, Where? If that is the arrangement for marriage, wacha nikae kivyangu. Now, Callisto Ododes told me that if you don't react like the first hearers of the original speaker, you didn't understand the text. You need to read it again, because you need to react like those who have said, okay, kama ni hivo, wacha ikae. Okay? That's how the disciples responded when they understood what he is saying. Do you know what Jesus told them? Jesus didn't encourage them. That's not what I really meant. This is what he said. All cannot accept this saying, but only to whom it has been given. This is what he's saying. Because of the hardness of your hearts, you've rebelled against the Creator. And you're creating things that he did not ordain. And you're separating things that he has not allowed you. And you're doing that out of the hardness of your heart. That can be said of any sexual immorality on this earth. Why we fornicate is because we oppose the Creator. It is our rebellious hearts, the hardness of our hearts, that is not able to accept the authority of the Creator when the Creator in his intelligent design had created it that you would have and enjoy the gift of sex in marriage. You tell him you do not know. I know enough. Because of the hardness of your heart, you rebel against the Creator who created you male and created female, and you assert your own thinking into his design. That's what sexual immorality means. And therefore, freedom is not to do what you want. Freedom is not the space to do whatever you want. Freedom is the ability to obey the Creator and agree with him. And when God was going to Egypt and said, let the Israelites be freed, he freed them from sin so that they might worship him. So the freedom in the Christian sense, as a Christian truth, is not just freedom from sin, but a freedom to obedience. We now are free to obey God. We now are free to align our lives with the Creator. We are able to receive his word and accept it. So that when he tells us that we need to be pure, we accept it. Why? Because he has freed us from the bondage of rebelling against him. So why should your daughter or son, what is the motivation and freedom that you give them? You need to let them know in your discussion with your children that freedom is not a time that will come when they will do whatever they want, because sometimes they feel like they are under your authority and they can't wait to get out of your authority to do what they feel like. And part of that is the imagination of sexual freedom. But scriptures tell us that they need to get freedom so that they are able to obey God, because we were created and designed to align ourselves with the original design at the very beginning. And when you read chapter number 1 of the book of Romans, anyone who rebels against God and continues to resist him and not give thanks to him, God gives them over to a depraved mind. A depraved mind in our language is a software that has been corrupted. Because our minds are also sexual, is one of the most important sexual organs. So if you rebel against God and do that which he has forbidden, he corrupts your software. And you lose it. And you lose the sense of right and wrong. And you start now going and doing what is unnatural. And that which even animals don't do. I needed to say one more thing before I go, and I'm realizing my time is gone. I keep saying this, entertainment. And this is why I wanted to spend my time talking about entertainment, because I know these are issues you are facing. Now, entertainment is a hold for our young people. I mean, I try to imagine if I grew up in this kind of environment. Most of us grew up in the village, isn't it? You saw these things when you were coming to college, isn't it? I mean, your sons and daughters live with them since they were in primary school. And all the connotations being pushed by the agenda of darkness, part of what the forces against our young people is actually the kind of entertainment that is available right here in our city. Like I had mentioned at the very beginning, we as a country have the highest internet mobile traffic. That means we are able to access lots of information and entertainment on the mobile phone. My own thinking is that this is a serious kind of push, because whenever you sit in a matatu, because it is a public transport system, I mean, I really, okay, some of you people drive your private car, so maybe you're not even identifying what I'm talking about. But if you have to drive in these vehicles every morning and evening, listening to Maina Kageni giving you a devotion in the morning, about how men are unfaithful and they are all useless. And you receive that devotion every morning. By the time 2 months are over, you are a convert. Subconsciously, you'll start believing those things that are being said. And in the evening, they play for you Lil Wayne. And you live on that diet, doing university in USIU. My friend, this is a serious upfront for your commitment for sexual purity.